So now we have reached the second, which is Gupi Chu. So Gupi Chu means the 10 necessary Dharma things. So one must adopt. So here it says, Rangi Putu Simbe Tuji Jitama Chupashiku. So it is necessary to be independent so that one is not misled by advice. So basically what it is saying is Rangi Putu Simbe Tuji Jitama Chupashiku. So one must, no matter what one undertakes, first one must think properly, reflect on it well, and then undertake whatever one should do. One should not do things, haphazardly, without thinking well, just out of emotion, doing things. Then later on you regret or you cannot continue. You start something, again you leave halfway, you do another, leave halfway, so like this. So like this is no good. So one must, whatever one does, one must think nicely, carefully, and make sure one can do it. And then once one starts doing it, do it 100%, with your full heart. So that is important. So before doing anything, you take a little time. You take a little time and reflect on it. Why you are doing it. Whether it is really necessary to do it. And then what are the consequences? What is the advantage by doing it? What is the disadvantage by doing it? So you properly study before getting into anything. So that is important. And then once you take some time like this and clearly study well, and then if you are confident, then get into it, then you have to do it seriously and completely. Now the second is Tepadam Chundruji Lama Tambe Kashin Rupashingu. So it is necessary to practice with faith and diligence in accordance with the instruction of the Holy Guru. So here what we mean is, first, as we discussed that, then the Guru to whom you decide to follow, and then first it is important to examine well, not just haphazardly go after anybody. So just because somebody is famous or just because somebody is interesting and then following, that is not how you should follow. One must examine carefully whether the Guru is a genuine Guru, whether according to his action, according to his teaching, according to his realization, and then one must examine carefully, and then once one is confident of all this, and then one must follow the Guru. And once one has followed the Guru, after all this examination, then one must follow with great, here it says, diligence. Chundu means any action which leads to liberation. So any virtuous action is chundu. Chundu means diligence. Not just any action is diligence. So here, when you talk about diligence, it is any action that leads us to liberation or ultimate realization. So that is diligence. So one must practice the Dharma with diligence, and then have utmost tepa. Tepa is faith. So when we say faith here, lots of us sometimes misunderstand faith with forceful, blind, make somebody follow somebody, so you have to follow this, otherwise it is not right. So then you have a blind faith. So not that kind of faith. So after examining the Guru well, then you develop true, genuine devotion to the Guru, seeing the quality in the Guru and seeing that you want to achieve that, and then seeing that this person, this Guru can lead you to achieving higher realization, then you develop genuine devotion. So that is called, that is a easy way of understanding what faith is. So one must understand faith that way. So not just because blind faith. So through understanding, through studying, then one must follow the Guru. And then once one has achieved this kind of devotion, then one will be able to absorb the instructions, the teachings of the Guru, and be able to follow the Guru. So with that kind of devotion, then the diligence is automatic. It will come automatically. One doesn't have to too much pressure. It will automatically happen. Now the third one, it is kanza gechun shebe nami damka manro shegu. So it is necessary to select instructions of one's Guru unmistakenly through understanding the difference between instruction that are appropriate and inappropriate. So basically, here what it's saying is, the Lama that one follows, then one must follow after all these examinations. So one mustn't follow just that. So after following through all these examinations, then one recognizes the genuine master. Then if one follows, then one is free from these misleading or making mistakes that way. And then one must follow a Lama who understands you well. Your shortcomings, your pros and cons. So one must follow such a Lama. And then the fourth here it says, Shirab Tanteba Nendenji Lama Tambitubon Rinpoche. It is necessary to enact the intentions of the Holy Guru with knowledge, faith and diligence. So the Lama who has the wisdom to liberate one's shortcomings, from one's shortcomings, and then that kind of Lama, then one develops genuine devotion, and then to the Lama also, when one examines the Lama also must have qualities like loving kindness, compassion to benefit beings. Then must have qualities of devotion to his the lineage masters, etc. So with that kind of quality of a Lama, and then when one follows, then one must one must follow that kind of Lama through understanding his through genuinely or completely understanding his qualities. And then one must be able to take in the instructions, the important or profound instructions which are given to you by such a Lama. And then now the fifth is that Timba and Shejin Payu Tandembe Gosun Yujunji Magu Bashigu. So here it is necessary that through one's possession of mindfulness, attentiveness and carefulness, one's three gates be unobscured by defects. So that is quite I think easy to understand, right? Tempa means mindfulness. Shijin means kind of how to say. Tempa means awareness. Shijin means mindfulness. So with awareness, mindfulness, and with carefulness, with carefulness, then one must always conduct whatever one does through the three doors. So we discussed this in the morning again. So whether it's through your mind, whether it's through your speech, whether it's through your physical action, so all three actions must be done with these three keeping in mind. Through mindfulness, through the carefulness, and through Tempa. Tempa is by knowing it. So one must do it with these three keeping in mind. Then the sixth is Kocha Ingdokji Idam Tinjing Tsuktabashigu. It is necessary that one be stable and independent in one's practice through possessing courage and the armor of diligence. So whatever one does, whether it's one's practice or any action, then one must, of course, here action means again virtuous action we're talking about, because that is through which one can achieve liberation, or one can achieve happiness. So we are looking for happiness, we are looking for liberation, we are looking to recognize this primordial wisdom in us. So therefore, so what can help us or lead us to that path is virtuous action. So here, so that kind of a virtuous action should be kocha is normally like armor, which we wear to protect. When we go into war, we wear armor to protect us from weapons. So same way here, the virtuous actions protect us from suffering, from problems, etc. So with the virtuous action, which is like the kocha, then diligently, working, to diligently performing virtuous actions all the time through the three doors. Then with great what do you say? Tancha is like with great effort, and with great commitment, with great commitment. Then one must adopt these virtuous actions and then carry on, very unwavering, not changing your mind all the time, so able to do that kind of lead a life with that kind of virtuous, a moral, a good moral life. Then the seventh is Changme Shimeji Jube Nata Mida Mashurwa Shigu. It is necessary that by being without attachment and craving, one avoid giving one's nose rope to others, which means, like, I don't know, here in Tibet, normally the animals, they pierce their nose, and then they pull through the nose, because it hurts the most, I think, in the nose. So if you pull left, it will go left. If you pull right, it will go right. It is very sensitive, the nose. So they are obedient to you. So that way, so basically what it is saying, but so if the rope is pulled, the animal goes after this person in front. But if the rope is on its own head, then it will go wherever it feels like, if nobody is pulling. So here that is given in an example. So it is saying, what it is saying is, one mustn't, one must have less. Of course, mustn't have it all, but starting must have less of attachment, craving, etc. These kind of conflicting emotions. If one has less, if one can control one's emotion, then one will be master of oneself more. If one is always distracted by many things, then one will always be led. One will always be sensitive to others. So you will be, if somebody says, supposing you are doing good practice, then suddenly one of your friend comes and says, let's go and today is a good day, let's go out on the beach. Then of course it's good, but then you say, oh, okay, then let me just leave my practice, let me go. That sounds good. So then you will go. So your practice not strong enough. So you are out there. So that way, you are unable to take your own decision. So here it says, therefore, one must be able to make strong decision oneself. One mustn't always be carried away by others. Then one has too much attachment, then one is always, through those desire, then one takes action like that, So one doesn't see mindfully. So all these mental afflictions obscure one from mindfulness, from seeing the right. So it is like losing one's way. It is like being misled. So one mustn't. One must be careful of that and be a master of oneself. Be mindful. Then seventh, eighth. Jormu jesum jisim bitadu choni sobala chumbashi. It is necessary to be diligent in the continual gathering of the true accumulation by complementing one's practice with preparation, execution, and conclusion. So this again in the morning also we discussed the three virtuous paths. So whatever one does, whatever one the practice to the path of liberation, then it must contain these three factors for it to be effective method to liberation. And that is, it must beginning contain refuge, bodhicitta, which is very important. And then the main factors free of attachment, free of dualism, and the third part, which is dedication. So one must be able to do that. And then if one does through these three methods, then it becomes a sacred path to lead one from the samsaric ocean of suffering to the perfect realization. So here, if like yesterday we discussed, if we understand the law of interdependence very well, then we see that nothing is by itself, independently, solid existence. Everything is dependent on each other. So it's just a correlation between many things. So that way it is empty of a solid, thing there. It is empty of such things. It is just a kind of many things put together creates something. So through this one will understand what emptiness means. So with that kind of understanding of emptiness, then one must do whatever one does with this understanding of emptiness. So if we understand the relation of the interdependence, then one will be able to understand this. Now the ninth, Chamba the Ningjin Musam June Simjin Jiturn Lord Chopashigu. It is necessary that one turns one's mind to benefit beings both directly and indirectly with loving kindness and compassion. So this is very important. So one must have loving kindness, compassion, develop genuine loving kindness, compassion towards all beings, and help beings. Means directly. So directly in whatever way you can help. Whether lending hand or with kind words, or with support, or with any way, with financial or any kind of help. So directly helping or indirectly. Gym means indirectly. So indirectly means even supporting them mentally. Or also rejoicing for them. Or passing words through others. To help them. So all this is indirectly. So directly or indirectly helping beings through loving kindness, compassion. The development of loving kindness, compassion is very important. On the 10th, Sherab Tang Kodo Jichu Tangje Ngpo Tang Semar Mashurwa Shigyu. It is necessary that through knowledge, understanding and realization, one not mistake all things to be substantial and inherently endowed with characteristics. So again, this comes back to the understanding of the interdependence. Through the understanding of interdependence, then one's strong grasping onto things as solid, as something there, unchangeable. So this will diminish gradually. So that is important. It says. For example, let's say. So let's say, for example, this house. So this house, for us, we have a strong grasping of this, such a thing as a house. But what is a house? If you examine it, it is a collection of windows, doors, walls, all that. Roofs. So all that put together is a house. So what is a window? Window is also a collection of glass. Some metal, some wood piece, all this. Wall is a collection of bricks, some cement, etc. Then the floor, collection of some wood, so all these kind of things. So everything, when you break it up, it further divides that way. So then all this put together, it's a house. Otherwise, there's nothing such as a solid house. So when you break down that way, then everything keeps breaking down, and also the glass. Then glass can be broken down into further pieces. So that way, nothing is a substantial there, and everything can be broken down. So that way, nothing is truly solid, existing that way. So one must understand this. So through understanding this, concept, one mustn't grasp onto things as solid too much. That is the 10th Dharma to adopt. So one mustn't have too much fixation over things. Too much strong fixation over things. Let's say another example to make it simpler. Let's say, for example, a car. Let's say like a Ferrari. Ferrari is a very expensive, famous car, right? So if we have too much fixation on this, then we think Ferrari is the best car. It is my dream. You want this car, all this. So you're always dreaming of this, and then it is difficult to get, because it is expensive. So maybe you just need to do window shopping, but even if you try, you work hard to get this, how much you will have to work, how much you will have to, kind of accumulate, always thinking of this. And there's lots of, too much fixation on this, there's so much of, complication on this, but, Ferrari and another car, but after all, this Ferrari, what is it? It is a car. It does same as the other car does. It will go from place to place. It will take, in fact, it takes 2 people, right? Most of the Ferrari. Maybe the bigger one 4, but most of them 2 people. Whereas if you have a normal van, can take 8 people, or maybe 10 people. So it does better work. Then it will, the work it does, it will take you from one place to another. So when it rains, even in another normal car, you will be protected from the rain. Even in the Ferrari, you will be protected in the rain. In the sun, is the same. So everything it does the same. But we have this fixation, this creation of this, kind of a idea that Ferrari is special. It is a special car. The name, the branding, all this, create this in us. So this is fixation towards such, just creation. It's a illusion. It is an illusion created, perception. Man created, our thoughts created this. But by itself, it is free of such things. It is just one's creation. So here it means that. So one mustn't be too, fixed towards such fixations. So if one has strong such fixation, then one will be, one will have lots of negative consequences through that. So one must understand this clearly. One must be free of such fixations. Now the next so the 10 Dharma one must have. Now the next is Tembarshe Bichuchune. So Tembarshe means the 10 things upon which one must rely upon. The 10 things upon which to rely. So the next. Again here, the number 1 is Tokpatan Tuje Dembil Amatapate. So this is the same again. It says rely upon a holy guru who possesses realization and compassion. So it's same as we earlier discussed. So this is important. So that is why it again and again says. And the second, when Shinyam Gala Shincha Bigumbaten, rely upon solitude that is isolated, pleasant, and endowed with blessing. So here. Of course, one can take it in many, many views. One is, one must, while practicing, then one must, remain in a very isolated place, free of lots of distractions, lots of noise, lots of people, etc. So that kind of, how to say. Isolation, one must. But also here it means mentally, one must try to isolate oneself from a lot of these conflicting emotions, such as anger, jealousy, etc., etc. So one must try to isolate oneself from such. So that is important. But in order to do that, then of course, first externally, trying to be in a more quiet place, trying to practice in a more kind of soothing environment. Those help. So it helps. So that is why, like a place like a center where you see, the tankas put up, where the altar is nice, Buddha's image there. Then when you come here, automatically you feel safe, you feel happy, you feel like practicing. Whereas if you are out in let's say, out on the street or out in the club, you won't feel like practicing, right? It is difficult to practice unless you have high level of realization. It's very difficult. So that way one must kind of rely upon the surroundings also. There's a saying, that in a forest of sandalwood, even if you plant just ordinary wood inside, the ordinary wood will slowly start smelling like a sandalwood, because it is the companion of the sandalwood tree. So that way, you also must try to be a good example and good companion for others. Then the fourth, so we tension, so simple then. Rely upon moderation, recollecting the defects of necessities. So here, basically, it's talking about contentment. One must always examine oneself and try to practice contentment. That is very important. Otherwise, we discussed yesterday, desire is something that will never end. It will never, we can never satisfy our desire if we don't practice contentment, if we don't, kind of train ourselves. So material, how do you say? So one will never have enough of these, material belongings. So the more you have, the more you will want. So that way, one must be able to, have contentment. So that is the fourth. And also, all the material wealth, everything is relative. Everything is subject to change. We discussed yesterday. So, so it cannot satisfy us completely. We must know this. So therefore, contentment is very important. Now the fifth, chutab jubimena chomenten. So rely impartially upon the instruction of the lineage of Siddhas. So here it says one must rely upon the great instructions of all the great enlightened masters, who have attained realization, irrespective of which tradition or which lineage or which they are. One must be able to, one must respect them, and one must rely upon their instruction. So that is also important, because they are realized being. So their instruction will be, of course, beneficial for oneself. So one must rely upon all the instructions without any judgment. Like this is right or that is wrong. So one must rely upon that. Then sixth, so rely upon materials, medicines, mantras, and profound interdependence that are beneficial to oneself and others. So in the path of liberation, when you're practicing, the Dharma, or when you are, practicing, then one must rely upon anything that can help you, anything that can benefit you. So good health is important. So in order to have good health, we need good nutrition. So rely upon good food, good nutrition. Don't waste your health by relying upon bad habits like smoking, drinking, all these, which harm you, which will harm this precious human life. So relying upon a good, quality substances, and then a good companion, good place, etc. So one must rely upon all these, whatever benefits, whatever kind of improves one's path towards liberation. And then, of course, like mantras, we have mantras for prevention from obstacles, mantras from for good health, long life, etc. So all those one must do, whatever benefits oneself, one must do. Then 7, it says, "Kamta trubi seta tablam den." So whatever, rely upon food that suits your constitution and upon the path of method. So here it means rely upon food that enhances your the physical physical existence, which is the 5 elements. So whatever kind of helps in that development of these. Then physical activity like exercise or whatever. So whatever is necessary, one must do. Whatever is healthy, one must adopt. All healthy activity habits one must adopt. And then the 8th is nyamlapim pichudan jonamten. So which means one should adopt the great Dharma, which will help one's practice to be liberated from sufferings, one should also adopt good conduct. These kind of conducts. So one must be able to do that. So anything that that generates good experience in the path to liberation. So like the choose Dharma. Any Dharma that improves oneself, whether it's your mental state, or whether it's your physical, or whether it's speech, anything that improves. So one must adopt those Dharma. So here, when we say Dharma, yesterday we discussed anything that eliminates suffering is Dharma. So the suffering comes from the root cause of suffering, which is ego, jealousy, anger, etc. The mental afflictions. So anything that reduces that, so that is the Dharma. So one must practice the Dharma which is able to do that. Sometimes you see people, who, when they don't know anything, they are very nice people. Then slowly they start learning Dharma, and then become very wise. Because the Dharma, a lot of philosophy they learn. Through philosophy you can talk. You can talk very high talks which people get confused. So you become good talker and all like this. And then after some time this person becomes filled with ego. Filled with he thinks he's the greatest. You say something to him and he straight away gets upset. Gets angry fast. So that is a sign that the Dharma practice is not going in the right way. The practice is not benefiting. So that way it is very important for the Dharma practitioner to be careful while practicing the Dharma with the right mental state. That is very important. So with the right mental state, with loving kindness, compassion towards sentient beings, with a genuine devotion to Buddha, with a genuine wanting to be free from the suffering of the samsara, then if one practices the Dharma, then these kind of complications will not happen. So if one is not careful, these things can happen. So there is many stories. When monks, nuns, stay into the retreat. Then when they finish the retreat, they come out. Then they are known as Lama. So actually, after retreat, you are supposed to be very, learned. You are supposed to be a high practitioner. So actually, you should be very calm, very respectable. But some, when some there are stories, that then if you don't call them, Lama, straight away they get angry. They say, "I'm Lama. I've done 3-year retreat. Why don't you call me Dharma?" So that is a sign that the 3-year didn't go too good, because the ego become more, after the 3-year. Instead of reducing the ego become more, So this is, so one must always examine oneself. One must always see these things, mindful, and then examine, and whatever helps one to reduce these mental, afflictions, then one must adopt them seriously and practice genuinely. Then ninth one, Thigu Kabatade Bipamaten. So rely upon worthy disciple who have faith and respect. So from the master's point of view, then you must rely upon. You must have genuine disciple. One must show the Dharma to those who have genuine compassion, loving kindness, compassion, who have genuine devotion. Who have the merit to contain this precious Dharma. So you must show the Dharma to such people, not to those who will misuse the Dharma. So one must examine that. Then the 10th says, Junam Namji Jundu Timba Shejin Ten, so which means rely upon mindfulness and attentiveness throughout the 4 modes of conduct. So four modes of conduct normally is when going or walking, when sitting, when eating, when sleeping. There's normally we have this thing. So basically it means always. Always one must be mindful and attentive. So always one must do that. Always check what you are doing. For what you are doing. What are the consequences. And what is right, what is wrong. One must always be mindful that way. So these are the 10 Dharma to rely upon. Now the next is Pamar Shavichuchu. So Pamar means the 10 things to be abandoned. The 10 things one must abandon. The 10 Dharma, the 10, so that is first one. So first is abandon master whose every action is mixed with the 8 worldly dharmas. So one must abandon so-called master who himself is fully wrapped in this samsara. It's called the 8 dharma, 8 worldly dharma. So which is number one, Nyepa, which means one who is always looking for material gains, material wealth gains. Number two is looking for self-satisfaction, happiness, always looking for self-satisfaction. Number three is looking for self. Chaba means how do you say? Fame, looking for fame. Then fourth is looking for praises from others, always looking for praises from others. So these are the 4 things trying to achieve, and then the 4 things trying to stay away, which is the opposite of these. So Manyeba means losing. Always Nyeba means to accumulate of worldly things, and then who don't like. Of course, everybody don't like suffering, but then always selfish. Too much selfish. Don't care about others. Even if it hurts others, one is ready to do something if it's beneficial for oneself. And that way. So that kind of thing. And then who doesn't like the bad bad words gets affected very easily. Somebody says something to you and you are easily affected. At once your emotions come up. And then you that way you try to abuse others that way. And then so that way. So opposite of these 4 in the previous. So basically, so that is the 8 worldly dharmas. So somebody who is filled with these 8 worldly dharmas, then one must abandon such a teacher. Because it is a proof that this teacher himself is, cannot lead you, because he himself isn't, hasn't been able to benefit himself. How will he benefit others? So therefore, one must abandon such a teacher. Next is Semta Nyamla Nube Kondakang Chongenpang. So abandon retinue and negative companion that harm your mind and experience. So that's again simple. So Sem means one's mind, and Nyam means one's experience. So anything that creates lots of unhappiness, creates lots of conflicting emotions, that kind of companion, then one must try to stay away from such companion. And it says one should avoid friends who create lots of misunderstanding and negative environment through their defilements and make your mind very unpleasant, as this will harm your practice and progress. So of course this is more towards the beginner level, where one has to protect oneself to a certain degree. then gradually, of course, these things will not affect you too much. But in the beginning, it is very important to have the right surrounding environment. Then third is Yengwa Cheshing Tsewa Mang Winde Tang Gumbapang. So abandoned place and hermitages of great distraction and danger. So that is quite simple also, I think. Right? So one must try to stay away from distractions, and try to stay in a more, kind of conducive environment for practice. And the fourth is Kuto Yoju Drubi Choapang. So abundance, sustenance obtained through theft, robbery, and deception. So anything that one obtains from, from taking advantage of others, then one must abandon such things. Because as we have understood, everything has cause and effect. So when one, one gets things through unlawful or meaningful means, then it has its consequences also. So that will not keep you happy. That will not. So it will harm your practice also, definitely. So one must stay away from such things. There are. It is quite amazing. That in India there are some public figures, who eat a lot of money of the people unlawfully, of course. And then, but if you eat some amount and then stay, maybe they can get away. But somehow they don't realize this. They eat so much that it becomes so obvious. And then at the end, their entire effort of eating all that is of no use, because then the government takes everything. He is put behind bar. He has to live behind the bar for entire his life. It is worse than when he had nothing. So that way, every negative action has its. You will bear the fruit at the end. So therefore, one must abandon from such action. What I mean, is eating little is okay. I'm not saying that. Okay. What I mean is, so when you do that, then that itself will create such a kind of negative, negativity in you, that you don't see what is right and what is wrong. Finally, that will lead to your own suffering. So one mustn't do that at all. So the fifth is sen the nyang be lehrte chawapang. So abandon actions and activity that harm your mind and your experience. So the same, what we have discussed, the non-virtuous actions through the three doors, mind, body, and speech. Then one must abandon those, and one must adopt the virtuous actions of the mind, body, and speech, which will, help oneself to enjoy, happiness. So that is the fifth. Then sixth is kamla So again, this is the same, which is abandon food and conduct that harm your constitution. So it's the same. Then the seventh, so abandon fixation and attachment that bind you in desire, hope, and greed. So one must, again, same, the practice of contentment is very important. Otherwise, if one has too much attachment towards, the dharmas, the physical objects, then the things that you enjoy through zug, tat, tira, region. So zug is physical, ta is sound, te is the smell, ro is the taste, and reja is feel. So feel is like clothes, etc. Physical is touch. Zug is through the sight. So through the sight, zug and then da is sound, which is through hearing. So too much attachment towards sound. And then too much attachment through the smell, through the nose, smell. So from these senses, the five senses. So if one has too much attachment to these things, then one's desire will never end. One will never have. Then one's mind will never be at peace. One will always be, be at a state of, confliction. So therefore, it is very important to have, contentment, practice of contentment. Then the seventh, so abandon fixation and attachment that bind you in desire, hope, and greed. So one must again same the practice of the contentment is very important. Otherwise, if one has too much attachment towards dharmas, physical objects, then the things that you enjoy through zug, ta, tira, region. So zug is physical, ta is sound, te is the smell, ro is the taste, and reja is feel. So feel is like clothes, etc. Physical is touch. Zug is through the sight. So through the sight, zug, and then da is sound, which is through hearing. So too much attachment towards sound. And then too much attachment through the smell, through the nose, smell. So from these senses, the five senses. So if one has too much attachment to these things, then one's desire will never end. One will never have. Then one's mind will never be at peace. One will always be, be at a state of, confliction. So therefore, it is very important to have, contentment, practice of contentment. Then the eighth is parul mede biju pa me bijunampang. So abandon careless conduct that cause others to lose faith. So if you are a teacher, one must practice what one preaches. So if you are so whatever whoever you are, whatever you are, then one must do actions through which others can dissolve. One mustn't do things which create create unexpectable or fathomable actions. So one mustn't do overdo things like that. Then the ninth is Tame Rudu ki lehrte. So abandon meaningless walking and sitting around. So basically, here now these instructions are instructions to practitioners. So it says meaningless. One must be able to maintain one's calmness, one's stability, so that one can practice. So not someone who has there are some who cannot sit still. Who need to do something, go around, plan things all the time. So if you are moving around all the time, planning things all the time, always creating something or the other, then where is the time to practice? Where is the time to reflect? So you don't have any time for that. So as a practitioner, one must be able to at least calm down, have some time to yourself, so that you can practice. You can reflect on things. One must be that way mentally calm person, not agitated person all the time. So for example, like the practice of the shamatha shine will help in this. So if you can do shamatha practice every day a little bit, then it will help you to calm down. So then even if you can just sit for some time without doing anything for about 5-10 minutes, that is also great. And it's very difficult to do that also if you are not used to that. So trying to do such things every day, then it will calm you down. Now, so those are the 10 things to be abandoned. 10 things to be abandoned. Now next is the 10 things not to be abandoned. Now the first one, Nama Simji Ramyo Imbe Nipam. So okay, there's one more here which is Yingje Shinren Jitawa Imbe Nipam. So it says, since compassion is the root of benefit for others, do not abandon it. So this is quite simple. So compassion, loving kindness, compassion is the root of all virtue. So therefore one mustn't abandon that. Now the next is Nama Semji Ramyo Imbe Nipam. So since appearance are the radiance of the mind, do not abandon them. So what you see, whatever you see, whatever appear is the reflection or the light of the one's mind. So therefore, Namasim Jiramayo Imbe Nipam. So one mustn't abandon that. So what you see, when you are, it is again, we are talking to the practitioner. So when a practitioner practices, meditation, so on, then here this is the Mahamudra. This is Mahamudra practice. So when one meditates, or when as a practitioner, then what you see around, it is not to be abandoned. It is not to say this is bad. This is not right. This is not true. So that is not the right way of going forward. So whatever you see, that is the manifestation of one's mind. So it is not to be abandoned that way. One mustn't look at it in the opposite way. That this is not right. That is not right. Not that way. Namto chuni jirolpa imbe bang. So since thoughts are the play of Dharma, Dharmata, do not abandon them. So here what it means is Namto, the thoughts that arise, then the limitless thoughts that arise. Actually, that is the Dharmata. Where Dharmata means emptiness. So because it is emptiness, it can manifest in limitless limitless forms, thoughts. So if we say this is bad, try to block the thoughts that way. It is impossible. Impossible to block thoughts that way. So understanding this, without trying to block thoughts out, let it be as it is. Maintaining as it is, but not going after them, but letting it be as it is. Then it has nowhere but to emerge into everything as it is. So that is what it is saying. It is not one mustn't try to abandon the thoughts that way. For example, let's say you look at a picture. You look at a modern art picture, and then if you look at it as it is, then the picture is there. It is there. So trying to say the picture is not there is trying to block that way, saying it is not there. Picture is not there is stupid. That is impossible. So looking at the picture as it is there, and then freeing yourself from the fixation as to this is this, this is that. Normally we have a fixation of a picture, like we say, oh, this is a face, that is a, we look at it and then we develop it to be something, like a house, face, the moon, this. Then we say, oh, this is, then you can see only that. So it is, your fixation to a certain thing. So, but actually it is free of such limitation. Therefore, when I look at the picture, I will see something. When you look at the picture, you will see something else. So by itself, it is free from such limitation. Therefore, each individual can see in so many forms. So because it is empty of a single fixed thing, then because it is empty of that, then it is limitless. It can manifest in limitless forms. So therefore, one must, as a practitioner, then like looking at a picture, seeing as it is without any fixation onto it, through its limitless manifestation, then that is how one must practice. So this is so these two roughly, so it means that when one practices, should go that way. Then the third is Nyo Mongwai Shiji Sande Bimbe Mipang. So the mental afflictions, the kleshas, are the revelation of wisdom. Do not abandon them. So here, of course, it is talking on a very high level. In our level, of course, mental afflictions like anger, jealousy, and we must try to abandon them through all means, through practices. But ultimately, there is no thing as anger, no thing as jealousy. Ultimately, it is free of such things. But relatively, right now we are relative. I am here, you are there, you. So I have anger on you. You create something which anger me. So that way anger is present, of course. But ultimately, it is non-substantial as a solid anger. So that way one must understand this, and then here, when you understand this gradually, then when you, supposing an anger develops, then you look into the anger, look into the anger as it is, and it is nowhere. It is nowhere to be seen. What is anger? There is no thing to hold on as an anger. So that is what it means. The Nyomong is the defilements or kleshas, and the other side of it is wisdom. So transform into the wisdom. So therefore, there is nothing to abandon, or so it is not to be abandoned that way. So of course, these are very high levels of practice. It is the practice of the Mahamudra. So here again, it's talking to the very high level of practitioner. So it says, "Nyamto jichudo yuri nipam." So the since desirable things are the water and manure of experience and realization, do not abandon them. So for anything that here it says the desirable things, so that time we discussed anything that is desirable, one must abandon them. So first we have to practice on that. So gradually, when we move higher than that practice, then here in the Mahamudra practice, and then desirable things also, they also become the cause, condition, and what do you say? Cause, condition, and is it becomes a beneficiary to one's practice or experience. So therefore one mustn't abandon them. So this is again very high level of practice. So like it is said, that if Buddha said that one like a monk, let's say a monk or a practitioner must detach from lots of attachment, lots of desire, all this. But if one is free of such desire, then even if one is offered an entire robe of gold, one can wear it. One can have it. One can wear that and adorn with all these. If one doesn't have a desire on that, one doesn't have so much attachment on that. So those are again different level of realization. So everything becomes a cause, condition, and help for one's practice. Now, fifth, natsa dunha gevi shinin in bimibang. Since sickness and suffering, our teachers do not abandon them. So this is what we discussed in the morning. When we are sick, we think of overcoming that. When we are suffering, we think of overcoming suffering. Otherwise, we are always kind of lost in the samsaric pleasures. So which are subject to change. But only when the change comes, we will realize. Otherwise, we don't realize it. We are always wandering in the samsaric pleasure. So we will not think of the Dharma. We will not think of the ultimate liberation, because we are wandering. So, but because of sickness, because of suffering, we turn our mind towards Dharma. We turn our mind away from such limited, changeable pleasures. So that is why it says the sickness and sufferings are like a teacher. So we must we mustn't abandon them. Look at it as a sign, teacher, to turning our mind towards Dharma. There are stories, great practitioners, great masters, when they got very seriously sick, they use that sickness into their practice and realize great, they could achieve great realization through using the sickness as a catalyst, for their practice. So instead of saying, why am I sick, why should I be sick, why not others, then you take that into yourself, accept that and practice on that. So that is how great masters used to do. Then sixth, dagi chuni jikuma imbe mebang, shugla chuna ngudu imbe mebang. So it says, since enemies and obstacles are the acceleration of Dharmata, do not abandon them. If they disappear spontaneously, that is siddhi, do not reject that. So if when obstacles and the enemies and obstacles happen, then one mustn't get dejected by them, and know that this is the catalyst to one's practice. And then if they dissolve by themselves, or if one enjoys natural benefits, then one must happily accept that, and then move along the path. Then Thablam Kaya Shirab Jinamde Imbebang, which is since the path of method is always a support for the path of knowledge, do not abandon it. So since the path of method of compassion is always the support for the path of knowledge is the wisdom, then one mustn't abandon such. One must Tapshi is the in the practice of the Dharma. Then Tapshi is the wisdom and method together. So such practice one must not abandon. One must always practice with this two methods. So through such, then one can realize the ultimate realization. Then Duk Jincho Viduji Chuju Mepang. So number 8. Since the Duk Jincho Viduji Chuju Mepang. Do not abandon physical Dharma practice that you can accomplish. So, for example, like physical practice such as prostration, such as physical activity of benefiting others, so recitation of the mantra, etc. So these kind of physical activity, so if one can do, then one must do. One mustn't abandon them. Just saying only meditation is the best, and then these other things, I don't want to do. So one mustn't abandon that way, because all these is meaningful. All these will benefit, purify one oneself will be a catalyst to recognizing the primordial wisdom in oneself. So therefore one must do all these physical activity, virtuous activities also. Okay, so just one more. So it says, do not abandon the intention to benefit others even though you have little ability. So even if you don't have much ability to benefit lots of beings, so how much ever you can do from your part, one must always do. So, and even if physically you cannot do, then mentally you can do. Mentally we are the master of ourselves. So even if you are the most weak person, you can have the greatest aspiration. Your mind can benefit the limitless beings. Even if you don't have anything, so your mind can do miraculous things. So that way your mind must always be great. Your mind must always be limitless to benefit everybody. So that way one must do all the time. Even materially, even physically, if you are not capable of doing so much, you should do how much ever you can, and mentally do as great as possible. So these are the so these are the 10 Dharma to not to be abandoned. Okay, so we end here today, and then tomorrow we continue.